Scoundrels, written by Paul Caranci, audio by Max Bowen, and edited by Skylar Batz. It has been said that political corruption is as old as government itself. Yet despite its timeless nature and its devastating impact on society, political corruption remains an elusive term. Listen to each episode of Scoundrels for some amazing stories about greed, corruption, and arrogance that sometimes defines politics in America.
The Bloodless Revolution. Governor Theodore Francis Greene. One of the most intriguing developments in Rhode Island's political history, certainly the one that may have had the greatest immediate impact on the government as we know it today, may well be the Greene coup of 1935, or the Bloodless Revolution, as it has come to be known. On the first day of that year, the Democrats, in a political maneuver seemingly designed by Machiavelli himself, turned Rhode Island state government inside out. To understand the passions that led to the events of January 1st, 1935, it is important to first understand the political history of the time. Rhode Island had been under the firm grip of Republican machine politics since 1856. The Republican state legislature was the center of power that controlled, in grand machine style, everything that was important. During the Republican reign, the state was gerrymandered in such a way that in 1900, according to Irwin L. Levine, 28 municipalities representing just 18% of the population elected 28 senators, 9 more than a majority of the Senate. The 10 largest municipalities, responsible for 82% of the population, elected only 10. Even until 1957, only 3.7% of the state's population was able to elect over 30% of the Senate. Because the political nature of the rural areas tends to be Republican, the state Republicans were able to easily defeat any legislation that they considered dangerous to their interests. In the early 1900s, the governor had little power. He had very little administrative authority under the Constitution and could not veto legislation. He could make recommendations only and couldn't investigate any department or administration or demand reports without Senate approval. The Senate had to approve all measures passed by the House and had the power of appointment. The Senate, therefore, held the real power, and it was under the control of machine boss General Charles Brayton, who traced his Rhode Island roots back to 1643 and the founding of his native Warwick. He was heir to a very prominent family with a political history. His father, William, served the state as a 2-term Republican congressman from 1857 to 1861. Charles Brayton himself boasted a distinguished military career in the Civil War as both a general and the chief political lieutenant of U.S. Senator Henry Bowen Anthony, principal organizer of Rhode Island's Republican Party. Anthony helped Brayton secure his own political positions that included U.S. pension agent for Rhode Island, U.S. postmaster for Providence, and a long tenure as the Rhode Island Republican Party chairman, a position he was able to maintain even though scandal chased him from his postmaster position. His political career spanned 4 decades, over which time he manipulated the politics of Rhode Island as a prototypical boss of a highly successful rural-based political machine. Levine tells how Brayton specialized in buying the voters of the small towns. From his perch in the State House office of the High Sheriff of Providence, he barked his orders in military fashion. He was so much a part of the legislative session that the Providence Journal once ran a cartoon depicting Brayton leaving a padlocked State House after planting a sign on the lawn that gave his home address in case of emergency. The caption read, "General Assembly adjourns." One of the elements of his power was a 1901 law that bears his name. The Brayton Law of 1901 made it impossible for a governor, whose legal powers of appointment were quite limited to begin with, to make any appointment without Brayton's consent. The law required the Senate to act on any gubernatorial appointment within 3 days. If the Senate failed to act within the prescribed time, the governor lost his power to appoint, and the Senate could then appoint its own nominee to the post. This assured that all patronage power for the entire state was in the control of the Senate, not the governor. Rhode Island historian Patrick T. Conley notes that in addition to his leadership qualities and reputation as a stern disciplinarian, Brayton's success was in his ability to control the General Assembly through old-stock rural legislation from the country towns, because each of the state's municipalities, regardless of size, had one vote in the Senate. In addition to the above, the Republicans' power was also secured because 60% of the state's population was disenfranchised until 1888. Until that time, only native males could vote, which meant, of course, that the large immigrant populations of the cities were politically neutralized. Even the word native was stricken from the law in 1888. The already substantial property ownership requirement was not only maintained, but also strengthened to include elections of municipal council seats. Therefore, the immigrant population, while being allowed to vote in mayoral elections, still had no voice in the election of municipal councilors. This is significant because, unlike today, at that time, city councilmen, not the mayor, controlled city patronage. In addition to controlling state patronage then, the Republicans kept a firm grip on municipal patronage. No one could work at any level of government without the consent of the Republican Party bosses. This reach also extended deep into the private sector job market. Finally, the Republicans control the finances upon which elections were run. Richard A. Gabriel, Ph.D., author of a University of Rhode Island research paper entitled The Political Machine in Rhode Island, explains that the financial support was drawn from two outlets. First, sheriff's fees and kickbacks from patronage appointees. Second, from the Hartford-New Haven railroads, banks, insurance companies, electric railway companies, and mill owners. In short, the Republican machine extracted heavy fees from businessmen who wanted special favors. It was, of course, no accident that Brayton himself was the chief lobbyist for all these substantial business interests. With control over all patronage jobs, and with the financial ability to ensure the election or re-election of all its candidates, the Republican Party could virtually do whatever it pleased, with no regard for the people and no fear of losing their positions.
Elite Handyman Services, over 35 years of trusted residential and commercial expertise. Elite Handyman Services is reminding motorists to slow down in residential zones and arrive alive. Never text or drink and drive. Elite Handyman Services, a name backed with over 35 years of experience in residential and commercial work. A full-service handyman, from home improvements, remodels, electrical, construction, plumbing, they do it all. 401-246-4197. That's 401-246-4197, or log into EliteHandymanServicesLLC.net. Professionals who care.
Slowly over time, however, the Democrats were able to make some inroads into the Republican control. Because the Republicans were entrenched in the suburban areas, the Democrats were forced to look for strength in the cities where ethnic immigrants were moving in large numbers. Yet, this newfound Democratic base was ineligible to vote because of the disenfranchisement restrictions. The Democratic cause was given a significant boost in 1928, however, when the property qualification for participation in the elections of councilmen was eliminated. At the same time, the nation was in the midst of the Great Depression. Nationally, Franklin D. Roosevelt, through the creation of federal welfare programs, provided a source of relief and help to the traditional clients of the machine, and thereby deprived the machine of much of its loyalty gained through the provision of social and economic services. Add to these developments 2 close Senate races in the election of 1934, and the stage for the revolution was set. In the years since 1928, operating on the strength of the new immigrant voters, the Democrat Party was becoming more organized and gaining General Assembly seats in each successive election. These were the conditions that Theodore Francis Greene, a Democrat first elected governor in 1932, faced when he began his long career in Rhode Island politics. Functioning under the Brayton Law of 1901, he was powerless in the face of the Senate, still under Republican control. In his re-election of 1934, Greene found fortune in a Democrat takeover of the House of Representatives for the first time since the Civil War. The slim 8-vote margin in the House assured that the cohesive, power-starved Democrats would emerge victorious on every vote. The Senate, however, was still under Republican domination, but by the slimmest of margins, 2 seats, with 22 seats being held by Republicans and 20 seats in Democrat hands. Democrats, who for the first time in 78 years were sensing that power was within their reach, would find a way to take advantage of election fraud allegations in the 2 close elections. In the Portsmouth Senate race, the Democrat lost by only 39 votes, while in South Kingstown, the Democrat lost by 61 votes. Allegations of fraud abounded in each of those races. Democrat Lieutenant Governor Robert E. Quinn, described by United States Senator John O. Pastore as a very forceful man and an idol of mine, refused to swear in the Republican winners until an investigation into the fraud charges could be conducted. There ensued a series of secret meetings at Greene's home. Among the participants were Quinn, key Democrat legislators, and U.S. Attorney J. Howard McGrath. Seizing upon a constitutional provision making each legislative chamber the judge of the elections of its own members, Quinn came up with the strategy of having a special Senate committee recount the ballots in the Portsmouth and South Kingstown races. Everything was choreographed, as the Republicans were shocked to discover. Using the authority of his office, Lieutenant Governor Quinn announced on the first day of the General Assembly session that in response to protests he received against the seating of Republican senators elected from Portsmouth and South Kingstown, he would not swear them in until the allegations of fraud could be investigated and a recount of the ballots could be achieved. The Senate, therefore, was deadlocked at 20 Democrats and 20 Republicans. Lieutenant Governor Quinn, a Democrat, would now be in a position of casting the tie-breaking vote on all matters. With little debate or fanfare, the Democrats took advantage of the stunned Republican senators by establishing a 3-member committee comprised of 2 Democrats and 1 Republican to count the ballots in the 2 disputed races. The committee took to its charge immediately, and by the evening of that same day, reported that the 2 Democrat challengers, and not the Republicans, had actually won Senate elections in Portsmouth and South Kingstown. The newly announced Democrat victors were sworn in almost immediately, and the coup was in full motion. One of the first acts of the new Democrat-controlled Senate was to vacate all judicial appointments to the state Supreme Court. Historian William J. McLaughlin told Journal Bulletin political reporter M. Charles Baxt, once the Democrats put themselves in control of the court, the GOP would have no way to appeal the revolution. Senator John O. Pastore, who told Baxt that he didn't know about the revolution until the morning of the opening session, admitted that the problem with the court was an old story. Democrats thought the Supreme Court was very conservative, was anti-democratic. Election cases that reached the court always went against the Democrats, and the resentment was brewing for a long period. The measure to vacate the court was ushered through the Senate in just a few minutes. The House of Representatives, while engaging in a livelier debate over the issue, came to the same conclusion. In that chamber, Republican Representative Walter Curry argued, "What are we coming to when not even the courts of the state are safe from patronage? There isn't one man in Rhode Island who can say one word against the integrity and ability of the present court and the honesty of each member. You even stoop to throwing the sop of a pension to justices if they withdraw immediately and no longer exercise their duties. You do that because you fear your own action tonight might be brought against that Supreme Court." Pawtucket Representative Harry F. Curvin, who would later become the longest-serving House Speaker in Rhode Island history, and then chairman of the powerful Rhode Island Board of Elections, carried the Democrats' water. He said in reply simply, "We are giving the people of the state what they requested by their votes on November 6th. The people last November voted for something more than mere candidates. They voted for what they had a right to have, and they gave a mandate to the Democratic Party to give it to them." Just like that, Chief Justice Charles F. Stearns, along with Associate Justices Elmer J. Rathbun, John W. Sweeney, John S. Murdoch, and J. Jerome Hahn, all Republicans, were voted off the Supreme Court. Immediately following House support for the motion to declare the court vacant, and very late into the night, a joint session convened for the purpose of electing new members of the Rhode Island Supreme Court. House Majority Leader Edmund W. Flynn, at the urging of Pawtucket boss Thomas P. McCoy, and after threatening to interrupt Governor Greene's reforms in the House if he wasn't selected, was chosen as the new Chief Justice. Along with Flynn, Democrats Francis B. Condon and William W. Moss, and Republicans Hugh B. Baker and Antonio A. Capitosto, were also appointed to the court. The Brayton Law, the law that essentially stripped the governor of his ability to make appointments, providing that power to the Senate, was also promptly repealed. Those who went to bed early on that first day of January 1935 would wake up the next morning to find out everything had changed. The governor, the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the state Supreme Court were now all under the firm control of the Democrat Party. Some 80 independent boards or commissions had been replaced with 11 departments of government, also under control of the Democrats. While machine politics would still be the order of the day, the agenda of the new machine was dramatically different, and the base of political power shifted from the rural areas to the urban centers. Republicans held power for too long, and power corrupts. The good people who held Republican control over the governmental system lost sight of why they held political office, and of whom they were elected to serve. However, in seizing the opportunity to bring an end to what they perceived as a corrupt government, the Democrats resorted to political trickery, itself a form of corruption. They took advantage of the circumstances before them to wrest control of an entire government away from the Republicans, whom the Democrats perceived as the real corrupt power brokers. Two wrongs, as they say, don't make a right, and the ends simply don't justify the means. The events of the bloodless revolution epitomize the meaning of circumstantial corruption.
Listen to next week's episode of Scoundrel to find out what happens next. Politics, corruption, and so much more. Follow along. Thanks for listening.
Dive into the past with gripping tales you won't find in textbooks. Are you ready to explore history's darkest corners and most inspiring moments? Uncover shocking stories of corruption, bribery, and true crime. Explore the underbelly of history with international award-winning author Paul Caranci. Each page reveals secrets that have been buried for centuries. Experience the drama of war, the beauty of music, and the power of spirituality. Caranci's books offer a diverse range of historical nonfiction. There's a story for every history buff, true crime enthusiast, and book club member. From students to war story aficionados, Caranci's work captivates all. Prepare to be transported to different eras and perspectives. You're sure to find a story you love and can't put down. Visit www.paulcaranci.com now to discover your next unforgettable read. Don't miss out on these captivating historical narratives.